big players are too slow to move something, so a plucky startup comes up.
There is no doubt that when traditional finance is here and embracing this movement, everything is going to be different for us.
If you're just coming with another way to do it, it needs to be 10 times better at least.
I think we also need to go to them and explain what's happening, and for them, they have to have an open mind.
Hey guys, this section we're going to be talking about traditional finance players and how they can start benefiting from this new technology, how they can just come into the real world asset space, how they can come into the tokenization space. So I want to ask you guys, what's your view on this, and how do you reckon, or what is the best, like you want to give some tips, some advice for these institutions to start exploring?
Well, this year I have spent a good dose of time speaking to lots of people who have teams in their financial institutions for some time, who have all sorts of proofs of concept and technologies and a lot of expertise built up over the years about this space. And if there's another common theme, is despite all of that, most of them outside of those proofs of concept or highly controlled environments have been unwilling to step out and to do something outside of that controlled environment. So I guess I'm saying to them, it's time has come to just do it. We have good product, and now is the time to go there.
So what about the ones? Because you're right. There are a lot of big players that they have teams. They have been exploring for years and years without telling anyone. However, there are some other ones, right? Like for example, we have dealt with trade finance suppliers, with inventory finance, with some sort of financiers that they are not at that level, right? So what about for those guys that, as we have experienced, they can take a lot actually out of the tokenization and real world asset space?
I think for them, I think that's a sort of a two-way street. I think we also need to go to them and explain what's happening, explain to them why this is better than the other available alternatives, and for them, they have to have an open mind. Ultimately, the blockchain solutions that we are pioneering are better, faster, cheaper, and safer, so they should win. It will take some time for those things to manifest themselves, so they need to have an open mind, and we need to be good at persuasion.
It's a good point. What about you, Sharif?
I kind of think about it in, I guess, two different ways. When you're talking about big financial institutions, come to this space, do something. We're starting to see that now. You're starting to see BlackRock looking for an ETF for Bitcoin. I mean, that's going to be transformational for the whole industry. It's going to give a level of credibility and a level of access to this space that we haven't seen before. But all of these institutions have, large enterprise-grade IT systems. They have IT vendors that they trust, and they won't go and take leaps until those IT vendors support what it is that they're trying to do. They're trying to experiment and play around with a wallet for some tokens, etc. But unless Microsoft and SAP and Oracle and all of these guys support the digital asset space and have a product that they understand, it just won't pass any InfoSec within those larger organizations. We are starting to see those IT companies now doing that. I was really excited to see SAP experimenting with a digital wallet in their Tech Ed conference this year. They had a blockchain-specific section around tokenization. And this is what you see. These big players start to experiment, and then they build solutions, then they make them industry solutions, and then they roll them out. So we're probably 18 months, 2 years away from them actually releasing something. But when they do it at scale. And they do it. And that's really, when you're talking about the big players, what's necessary from my point of view is solutions that they understand, that can be supported, that can pass their rigorous InfoSec in order to get through the risk and compliance. It's just not going to happen otherwise.
So same question as I asked Brian. What about for the SMEs, for the medium type of financial service providers out there, right?
Yes, I mean, what we're proposing, or what the industry is proposing, has to solve a problem for them, and it has, if you're just coming with another way to do it, it needs to be 10 times better at least. Otherwise, it's just not going to be adopted. There's too much friction, too much learning, too much risk. you lose some keys, or somebody doesn't have access to a wallet, or did I send that to the right place? How do I get that back? Like, all of those things need to be tighter, more secure. But we are seeing the industry kind of, looking for solutions. We want liquidity against these type of assets. Our current funding lines don't support them. There's nothing wrong with the risk. There's nothing wrong with the compliance, but just our normal funding lanes just don't do that. Is this alternative source of finance suitable for that? So that's solving a real problem. And if you're coming with real solutions to real problems, it's an easy yes. But if you're coming to say, here, try this because it's new, and use this wallet because we think it's cool, it's just not going to happen. It's just never going to happen.
Yeah, no doubt. Like, I fully agree. I think there is definitely some how to say, there are opportunities for these medium-sized financial players. As you were mentioning, like a lot of these guys are extremely constrained with the covenants that they are given from the credit perspective. And they cannot even just move actually a bit from what they have as products, right? Which what is going to happen is constrained as well to the target market that they can go and they can provide these services. And I believe that these on-chain credit marketplaces are allowing them just to have an alternative source of liquidity. And I think that's beneficial for them.
But if they don't and they don't adopt it, then they'll be disrupted. I mean, we've seen this time and time again. There'll be other niche players that just do that.
Correct.
And those opportunities will be serviced for that, and they'll lose those customers.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we see this stuff over and over again. The big players are too slow to move something, so a plucky startup comes up. We saw that with Revolut. I mean, 4 years ago, I was in AIB. People were paying for their lunch in an AIB building with Revolut. Everybody was. Why? It was a better product. It worked better, Yeah. Now the banks are dropping IT products because they can't compete at a tech and innovation layer with these startups. So,
well, we saw it here in Ulster Bank, right? When Ulster Bank decided that retail was not their thing anymore because they couldn't compete, and they left. Yeah. But if you have...
There's one other item that I think is important for the large institutions and how they are upskilling in this space. It's beside our space rather than actually it. But all the central banks in the world are working on CBDCs.
Yes. Yep.
Most of them are blockchain enabled in some way, shape or form. So all of the banks working with their central banks or their regulators all are understanding what this means, analysing what this means, and to Sharif's point, the various, we'll call it, arms of the institution that need to move in order to enable this are moving. Yeah. And that has the advantage of that familiarity and understanding for that blockchain space gaining a foothold in the financial institution, which then that knowledge, can seep across to what we are doing. And it's very good that that knowledge about how things work and that fear is being dissipated.
Yeah. So what would be if there is a company out there, right, that say, look, I'm a sole believer on this technology, right? I believe that there is something there for me. What would be kind of the key points that you would say, look, do this, do that, researching here, contact these people. What would be the suggestions that you guys will give to these companies to start just understanding a bit better the space and get into it?
I'm afraid I'm very practically minded. Mm-hmm. I think that if they haven't tried a proof of concept or something internally, they should work with people in the industry who have done this before. Look within their space how they can safely experiment with this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I always have a practical bent towards it. Find a way that they can do that experiment, understand how it works, have the lessons internally, and a preference for action. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it depends on who exactly we're talking about. But if we're talking about banks getting more involved, I'd suggest that they, have an arm within their bank that, provides banking services to startups in the space and understand what's going on, and that, there's real money moving around and in a compliant fashion. There's big players now, the likes of Circle, who are trying to, roll out stable coins at scale around the world with the right licenses, with the right central banks. Embrace that and offer on and off ramps for those, And then you'll learn and you'll see the scale of it, and you'll see the next levels of opportunities. For other customers, the traditional, whether they're trade finance companies or whatever, if they want to dip their toe in this space, they're going to have to talk to their banking partners, because if they take some credit lines from crypto, they still have to off-ramp that into the fiat world. So they have to have that conversation. I mean, we all know many companies that have just had banking facilities pulled from them with no explanation, no conversation. And that's, if you're genuinely trying to run a business, that's just a risk you can't, it's just too time consuming. So we're not ready for it yet, So a lot of it will come back to the banks. Whether they'll innovate, and take those risks remains to be seen. I'm sure some will, but maybe it'll be new banks that pop up that offer these services and bypass them, like we saw with, Revolut and Wise and all of these other companies that are now at massive global scales.
And I think in the banking space, we see banks in several European countries who are specialists in this and have services for them. They might be relatively small in scale now, but the fact that they exist is a development from a few years ago.
Efficient. Yeah. Well, we used to have the Signet in America. That was fantastic for the banks that were part, or the people that have bank accounts with them, because it was settled. Unfortunately, it's gone now.
This is it.
But let's hope that soon we have something similar, right?
But again, I mean, just to go back to the point I made earlier, with the likes of BlackRock now starting to get involved and have ETFs, and we will start to see real institutional money come. Things are going to get serious very, very quickly. And as soon as things start getting serious really quickly, you're going to see serious players, seriously IT service providers, serious support, serious regulation. These guys know how to do financial services at scale, and this is, while we're using blockchain technology or cryptocurrency or tokens or NFTs or whatever, there's nothing really new here. You're transferring value from one place to another. That's it. And that's,
That's, look, I will have to say something, right? Because, we have been doing this for some time, and I think we have enough expertise. So, if there are any business out there, right, that they don't have the capability as, let's say, banks or big financial institutions to have a whole arm that is dedicated to this, well, it's simple. Just get in touch to people in the space like us, to some other projects that are out there that have been in the space. I think it's important always to do the own due diligence and see who are you going to be just getting into bed with, especially in this space. So
absolutely. I mean, if there's anybody who's unbanked or not getting the services they need from their providers, then absolutely look at our space and bypass the banks. There's technology out there now. You have the pool capital from around the world to deliver projects or to run your business, and you can provide value back to them, and people are hungry for it. Hungry for it.
And this is a perfect segue actually into what we're going to be probably discussing in the next segment, right? That is like businesses that are trying to just do things in a different way, that they are actually just innovating, right? And seeing or capitalizing the real opportunities from
solving
the space,
problems.
Solving problems. That's it.
This podcast is for information purposes only and should not be considered as financial advice. Please do your own research.